The Whispering Woods. Nestled on the outskirts of the quiet town of Eldridge was an ancient forest known as the Whispering Woods. It was a place shunned by locals, cloaked in a veil of superstition and fear. Legends told of strange sounds drifting from within the trees, soft whispers that enticed curious souls to venture too far and never return. One brisk autumn evening, a group of friends, eager for adventure and the thrill of a ghost story, decided to dare each other to step into the woods. Among them was Clara, a pragmatic skeptic, who openly dismissed the townsfolk's fears. "It's just an old wives' tale," she scoffed. "Let's see what all the fuss is about." As they crossed the threshold, the air turned thick and damp, leaving an unnatural silence in its wake. The trees stood like sentinels, their gnarled branches reaching overhead, forming intricate patterns against the waning light. As the sun dipped below the horizon, an eerie chill settled around them. "Let's split up," suggested Mark, a thrill-seeker. "That way, we can cover more ground and find whatever's causing those whispers." The others hesitated, but he convinced them with bravado and a challenge. Clara, refusing to be outdone, paired with Mark. As they wandered deeper into the woods, a creeping sense of unease began to gnaw at Clara. The whispers had started as faint murmurs, drifting on the wind, but now they felt almost palpable, rising and falling like a distant chant. Mark shrugged it off, his bravado still intact. "See? There's nothing here," he laughed, but Clara felt a knot tightening in her stomach. "Maybe we should head back," she suggested, her voice trembling slightly. "Just a little further," Mark insisted, his eyes glinting with mischief as he led her deeper. The whispers seemed to grow louder, twisting into unintelligible words that clawed at her mind. From somewhere in the shadows, a voice broke free, chilling her to her core. "Help us," it beckoned, haunting and forlorn. Clara stopped, her heart racing. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" Mark scoffed, but he was beginning to look uneasy, glancing over his shoulder. The woods darkened, shadows swirling unnaturally beneath the trees as night fully enveloped them. Clara shivered as the whispers turned sharp, like nails scraping on stone. "Let's go back," she said, suddenly desperate. Mark rolled his eyes, trying to laugh, but the sound was hollow. "Okay, fine. But let's just look for 2 more minutes." He pushed ahead, drawn by a force Clara couldn't understand. Against her better judgment, she followed, but the whispers grew louder, turning into urgent cries for help mixed with laughter that reverberated through the trunk of every tree. The air thickened with a sense of impending doom. Clara felt isolated in a web of darkness as the forest seemed to close in around her. Suddenly, Mark stopped. "Did you see that?" He pointed toward a flickering light in the distance, shimmering like a will-o'-the-wisp. Before Clara could respond, he took off toward it, his curiosity overriding the warnings of her instincts. "Mark, wait," she shouted, but he was already racing ahead, swallowed by the shadows. She hesitated, the whispers now screaming in her ears, drowning out her thoughts. Panic surged as she stumbled after him, fear propelling her forward. The light flickered, illuminating strange shapes that danced along the edges of her vision. "Mark," she cried out, but her voice was swallowed by a sickening silence. The moment she reached the light, she found herself in a clearing, a place that pulsed with an unnatural energy. The trees loomed over the space, their twisted forms resembling figures frozen in torment. And then she saw him. Mark stood at the center, entranced, mouth agape as if stargazing into the void. Around him, specters rose from the earth, their gaunt faces twisted in agony, eternally pleading for release. "Mark!" Clara shrieked, but the whisper swallowed her voice, wrapping around her like a vice. Mark turned to her, his expression empty, eyes glossed over, as if he were no longer there. The whispers pressed against her, a cacophony of despair, beckoning her to join them. She felt a pull, a disturbing desire, to step forward, to surrender. But a fragment of her will fought back, breaking through the haze. "No!" she screamed, clawing at the air as she turned to flee. The forest screamed in frustration, and the ground beneath her trembled. The shadows lunged, grasping at her ankles with icy fingers, but Clara ran, her heart pounding like a war drum. With every step, the whispers grew fainter, and she crashed through the underbrush, branches tearing at her clothes. Bursting through the tree-line, she collapsed on the forest edge, panting heavily. She turned, fear etching her features as she scanned the woods. The whispers had silenced, leaving only the echo of her own breath. "Mark," she called, racking her mind with the realization of what she had left behind. But the woods remained still, a dark maw willing to consume any foolish enough to linger. With trembling hands, she stumbled back toward town, the weight of what she'd witnessed pressing heavily on her soul. Weeks passed, and Clara returned to Eldridge, forever haunted by the knowledge that something had taken her friend, pulling him into the depths of the Whispering Woods. Still, the townspeople whispered warnings, and Clara listened, for the woods still beckoned, waiting for their next curious soul. And sometimes, on quiet nights, when the wind blew just right, she could hear Mark's voice in her dreams, a hushed plea echoing from beyond the trees, "Help us."